What are the most popular Pokemon TCG pre-made deck options? I will admit, I did not think about that question one iota, or really care for that matter, until I stumbled on some data yesterday that kind of helps quantify this idea of popularity and what people are buying. So today, I wanted to share my findings with you and see what we can learn, if anything, from this data about what is popular right now in the pre-made deck space. I'm Jet from inthirdperson.com. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. And for this, we are going to be looking at Amazon sales data. Now, I don't shop on Amazon all that much, and yesterday as I was on Amazon, I noticed this whole like 600 plus bought in the past month. This might also be a regional thing as well, because I'm not in the US. I may not see that, but on Amazon.com, this is a feature that is there, and you can kind of get an idea of how well stuff is selling. That being said, it only shows this indicator if it's sold at least 50 plus, so that's what we're going to be looking at today. And I do want to preface all of this like that this is not the definitive ranking or definitive sales numbers for how well these have sold. This is one retailer. This is not necessarily a place where competitive players are shopping for stuff. And for example, competitive players are probably not buying pre-made decks anyway. You're probably buying the singles as soon as they hit the market so that you can bring them to the next tournament. And pre-made decks are going to lean towards more casual players anyway. Even the league battle decks are going to be more beginner to intermediate level players that are looking to get a whole bunch of good cards in one shot without having to go through the hassle of buying singles. So lots of things to preface this whole exercise, but I do think it's still kind of cool to see where everything shakes out. So let's start at the bottom here. We're going to work our way up in ascending order, and we're going to start with the 2021 league battle decks. These are actually level 2 decks before they changed the conventions. Now level 3 decks are league battle decks, and level 2 decks are called deluxe battle decks. But before then, league battle decks were level 2s, and so we get the 2 Urshifu decks and the Inteleon decks. In retrospect, I mean, at the time, these were the best decks you could get. However, in retrospect, seeing what Pokemon have done these days with the level 3 league battle decks, which are notably better than these ones, I'm not surprised that these aren't selling as well now. I also think that from a just general popularity of Pokemon, Inteleon and the Urshifus are not necessarily the most popular, and these league battle decks do skew a little more competitive, and the Inteleon deck has rotated out of standard format entirely, and the Urshifu ones, a bunch of the cards in these have rotated out, and the Urshifus themselves are going to be rotating in the next rotation. We don't know exactly when that's going to be, but it feels like it's going to be spring 2024 when these rotate, so I probably wouldn't recommend buying these at this point. There's a lot of decks here in the 50 plus range, so we're just going to go through these real quick. We've got Noivern, we've got Melmetal. Interestingly, the Charizard theme deck, this is going like way back at this point. It is still selling at 50 plus, and it's a curious choice. Yes, Charizard is a very popular Pokemon, but this is a very old deck. All of the cards have rotated out of standard play. That said, this was a PTCGO classic in Theme Battle. Everyone was playing this deck. I was playing this deck. I actually have a copy of this deck IRL, and I don't regret having it. I think the most interesting thing here is the Meowscarada and Quaquaval Deluxe Battle decks. These just came out, and for them to be at 50 plus does ring a couple of alarm bells. However, there is a major caveat to this listing. This is the only one I could find, and this one is both Quaquaval and Meowscarada, but when you buy it, they send you one of them at random. This is one of my biggest beefs with online retailers selling pre-made decks, is that you are going to find retailers that when they get like a set of these that come together, they're going to sell you one at random thinking like there's no difference, like they're going to sell you a booster pack at random. But these are pre-made decks that have 2 different things, and you probably want one or the other. So this is not an ideal way of buying Meowscarada or Quaquaval. So in that sense, I'm not surprised that the number here is so low. I think if they were split separately, these would have sold better. We've got the Lycanroc and Corviknight bundle, as well as Lycanroc or Corviknight. Again, this is one of the annoying ones where you buy, you pay, and then they send you one or the other. I think that's really scummy, and retailers should stop doing that. We also have the Venusaur and the Blastoise decks, and Zeraora all the way down here as well. I'm kind of surprised by the championship decks selling as low as they are. Granted, these are not legal for competitive play. However, these are also like world-class decks that are incredibly strong, that were played in the World Championships of that time, and yet these don't sell well. And I wonder if these sit in a weird point where these are too serious of a product for your casual consumer, but the fact that these are also not legal for tournament play makes them a complete deal breaker for competitive players. So maybe there's just no market for these, or maybe not as big of a market. I think as commemorative pieces for the World Championships, they're great, but as something to either play casually or, yeah, definitely not competitively, but even casually, they do have some limitations as well because the card backings are different. You can't play with these cards you can't just mix them with other cards and upgrade them without it being obvious what cards you're playing. You have to sleeve them up. It's a whole thing. So these are all in the 50 to 100 plus. The Andre Scubal deck selling a little better. That is the Masters Division World Championship deck. But yeah, overall, championship decks not selling particularly well. I was actually kind of surprised by the Trainer's Toolkit being as low as it is. I think on one hand, it is a great resource for assorted helpful cards. You're getting a 1/1 Arceus line, and Arceus is still fantastic. You're getting a whole bunch of trainer cards that are relevant and playable. You're getting a couple packs, you're getting sleeves and dice and all of that stuff. If you're looking to upgrade decks, this is in theory a great thing to get. However, when I went through the exercise of like, how do I actually use this to upgrade the pre-made decks, it doesn't necessarily work so well in that regard. I actually started trying to put together a video around upgrading every deck you could buy in the store using a Trainer's Toolkit. And one, it was a really arduous process. And two, I think even with the Trainer's Toolkit, you'll get a couple pieces here and there. And like, I look at this list and it's definitely better than where it was. But because of certain decks, especially the level 1 EX decks where the Pokemon lineup is really weird and you're only getting 2 of trainers in the Trainer's Toolkits, I still think that this deck is pretty wonky even after upgrades, and I don't know what the value is on that front. And then when it comes to the League Battle decks, the cards that you'd need for many of the League Battle decks aren't necessarily in the Trainer's Toolkit. So it's a little weird of a investment. I think it is a really nice to have, as I just need a bunch of like good spare parts, but I don't necessarily think you can specifically apply it to other pre-made decks, at least in an effective manner. I think the deck that benefits the most from just the Trainer's Toolkit is Meowscarada, because Meowscarada doesn't have rare candies, it doesn't have double turbo energy. Arceus is a card that you can put in the deck, but a lot of the other pre-made deck options don't necessarily slot in as well with this Trainer's Toolkit. Some other ones at 100 plus, we've got the Rayquaza deck, and then this weird listing for Lycanroc and Corviknight, which is different from the 2-pack of Lycanroc and Corviknight. This, they send you 2 individual decks versus the bundle, which has the decks in one box. I would still recommend getting the 1-in-1 box because you are also getting some bonus cards. When I bought the Venusaur Blastoise deck, they gave us some extra trainers, including Boss's Orders, which is an absolutely essential card that doesn't come in these level 1 decks most of the time. So I would recommend getting the 2-pack if you have the option of the 1 or the 2. Moving up the charts a little more, we've got the Calyrex decks. These were released in the summer of 2022, and I personally think these are some of the most complete League Battle decks that the Pokemon Company have ever put out. You can take these right out of the box and just play competitively, and they're great. And of course, you could make upgrades, but as far as this is what the competitive level version of these decks look like, these are about as close as they've ever gotten to releasing a complete product. And I have a lot of love in my heart for these decks. However, both of these are pretty old at this point, and the big one in particular is Ice Rider Calyrex at 100 plus sold. I think at its peak when it first came out, I bet Ice Rider sold more because Ice Rider was a top 10 deck at the time, and this list very much mirrored what was being played competitively at the time. You make a couple of tweaks, like really you could just put 2 choice belts into that deck and it was the competitive deck. However, a lot of the cards in the Calyrex, Ice Rider Calyrex deck have since rotated out. Ice Rider isn't really meta relevant anymore. It got ousted by Mew VMAX. Now chien-pao kind of plays that role of the water attacker that can one-shot everything, and there isn't really any room in the competitive scene for Ice Rider. And that being said, Shadow Rider is selling a little better. I wonder if just again with the more casual audience, maybe Shadow Rider is a little more popular on that front. But also it's a little more playable in the current meta, and not to say that Shadow Rider Calyrex is a meta deck or anything like that, but we do still see players messing around with Shadow Rider Calyrex and finding fringe use cases for it. Most recently in Obsidian Flames, you can pair this with the Soul Rock Lunatone Path combo to create a really interesting combination there that kind of works, and I'm sure that players are going to continue experimenting with Shadow Rider Calyrex until it rotates out, and I think that's going to be a part of why these decks are down here as well. These are rotating next year, and we're going to have to do a separate video about League Battle decks and rotation because we're losing a lot of decks in the next rotation. The Ampharos level 1 EX deck is in the 200 plus range. It is maybe not the most popular Pokemon, but it does have some applications. Once the Miraidon deck comes out, you could just pop one of these in there. And I mean, you'd have to get the right Flaffy. It has the wrong Flaffy, not the Dynamotor one. But theoretically, you could put the Ampharos EX card into the Miraidon deck. Lucario selling at 300 plus, and again, this is another level 1 deck. It's certainly more popular than Ampharos, just Pokemon wise, which I think is a big factor here, and it's definitely not competitive connotations because this Lucario EX is unfortunately not competitively viable at all. So the reason it's selling more is largely because people like Lucario more than they like Ampharos. Tinkaton is up here in the 300 plus range, and this is one. Tinkaton is another popular Pokemon. In terms of like competitive connotations, this one is maybe on the fringes of Rogue tier, but players do play around with this card. It does have a really interesting attack that theoretically does unlimited damage. It's very weird to set up, but I'm not surprised to see it selling a little better as an EX deck because Tinkaton largely targeting a casual audience. You put the popular Pokemon on the front of the box and it's doing what it does. Speaking of popular Pokemon, Mewtwo's the Pokemon Go battle deck selling over 300 copies in the last month. And yeah, it's Mewtwo. It's a very cool art that is different from the one in the mainline Pokemon Go set. And there's some collector connotations to this, but really I think I want to learn how to play the Pokemon trading card game. Mewtwo's one of my favorite Pokemon. It has the reputation as being one of the strongest Pokemon, and here it is in a deck. Yeah, sure, I'll pick that up. Maybe the most disappointing placement in this whole list is Palkia's League Battle deck at 300 plus sold. This is a relatively new product. It came out in, I think it was May of this year, springtime this year. It's a very good deck, and it is one of the more complete decks that they've ever put out. Really, you could put in one more Palkia V-Star and just kind of leave it at that, and you're good. However, at 300 sold, especially relative where one of the other League Battle decks is, it's kind of disappointing to see this as low as it is. I think that Palkia is an incredibly strong deck. It's getting better. This is a meta deck, like on the fringes of meta, like a tier 2 deck. You put some chien-paos in here. You could buy the chien-pao deck and pop a couple of chien-paos in here, and you have an incredibly strong meta deck. But so far, it hasn't been selling too well. I think the big thing here is the combination of Palkia just not being as popular of a Pokemon. And I think they kind of missed the boat on Palkia popularity. In most of 2022, up until Lugia showed up, Palkia was the deck to beat. And I bet if this was released at some point in 2022, this would have sold much better than it currently is. But for now, it's kind of lukewarm sales. I kind of hope this sells a little better. I do think Palkia is very strong, and we are seeing more competitive ways to play it. But the shopping audience is not that intrigued at the moment. At the top of the EX Battle Deck line, should be no surprise, it's Chien-pao. Chien-pao, I think, is one of the more popular Treasure of Ruin Pokemon from the Scarlet and Violet games, but there are also competitive connotations to Chien-pao. It's a very popular competitive deck, and granted, this is the level 1 deck, so you're only getting a handful of cards that can be used competitively. But Chien-pao is popular. You're getting the Baxcalibur line, which is important to making a competitive level Chien-pao deck work. And on top of that, the prices for the Chien-pao card by itself are actually pretty expensive. It is to the point where it's a better deal to buy the Chien-pao deck than it is just to buy the single for Chien-pao. This is something I found out about when I was at Fan Expo a couple of weeks ago, and by the time I made that realization, the Chien-pao decks had all sold out, and the single cards for Chien-pao also sold out. So I'm not surprised to see this one selling well. I can see this selling well to a casual audience. I can also see this selling well to a competitive audience that is looking at the prices for singles of Chien-pao and saying, like, I'd rather just spend the extra $1 or $2, also get the Baxcalibur line and a bunch of trainer cards as well. This one really caught me off guard. Mewtwo versus Melmetal at 500 plus sold. And I wonder how much of that, I definitely part of that is Mewtwo is a popular Pokemon. I don't know if Melmetal really carries it another 200 sales. I don't think Melmetal is that popular. I wonder how much of it is that sale price there where it's listed at $40 and it's actually on sale for $26. I don't actually think that's a deal, but because it's Mewtwo and it looks like it's a sale price, that maybe this is why this product is selling as well as it is. I mean, hey, if you really want Mewtwo versus Melmetal, fine, go ahead, and you understand these are beginner level decks, cool. I'm just a little surprised that this is selling as well as it is. As far as League Battle decks go, Mew VMAX is the #1 seller, and I think there is no question as to why, but sure, we'll run through some reasons why this has sold over 1,000 copies in the last month. It is based on an incredibly popular Pokemon, so people love Mew, and you see Mew and you're like, yeah, I want to buy that, before knowing any of its competitive connotations, of which it's very strong on that front. It is based on the Mew VMAX deck, which is one of the best decks ever made in the Pokemon TCG. It recently won the World Championships, which I think is going to help spike the sales of this deck even more. Now, I don't think it's the most complete deck. Again, I've tested this deck in its current configuration. I do think the lack of Genesects is a little weird, and it does need 2 more Mew Vs and 1 more Mew VMAX. But even still, this is an incredibly strong League Battle deck, arguably the best one ever made, and at least in terms of like competitive ceiling, if you're willing to put in the work to upgrade it all the way, Mew VMAX is hands down the best League Battle deck. So I'm not surprised to see it as the best seller. That being said, it's not the best selling product on this list. #1 by a landslide is actually Battle Academy 2. And this makes a ton of sense to me. When you think about those buying Pokemon products on Amazon, you're probably more casual or newcomer, and you see this box. It's the Battle Academy. It's meant to be for beginner level players. For only $12 US, you're getting 3 decks plus a board plus all of the tutorial stuff that comes with it. That seems like a really amazing deal. I think it's a great tool for introducing players into the Pokemon trading card game, so I'm not surprised to see this selling. Congratulations to Pokemon Battle Academy for being the best-selling pre-made deck option. However, there are a couple of things that I wanted to note here, because any day now, the My First Battle set is coming out, and that is meant to be another sort of entry-level, tutorial-level pre-made deck that is even lower than Battle Academy in terms of complexity, to the point where they're changing the core rules of the game to ease brand new players into this, whether you're trying to teach young children or teach those who are intimidated by the Pokemon TCG or just any trading card game, and you want to start at literal ground zero. So we've got something that's even more accessible than Battle Academy coming soon. And does that take the place of Battle Academy? A couple of months ago, when the My First Battle was first revealed, I thought, no, they would make another Battle Academy. And looking at these numbers, it makes me think, yeah, you'd make another Battle Academy because this sells so well, and it is a great product for teaching new players. But I think the combination of My First Battle coming soon, and we have not heard anything about a new Battle Academy for some time now, it makes me wonder, are we getting another one of these? It should be around this time. We are looking at this Battle Academy. It's based on Pokemon V, and they're getting long in the tooth. We're in the EX era of the game now. At what point should we be getting the Battle Academy 3 with EX Pokemon at this point? And so far, we have not seen that. I'm still holding out hope that we will see another Battle Academy, but there is theoretically a chance that this might be the last one. And there we go. That is a look at the pre-made deck options in terms of their sales numbers. Again, this is not a definitive list of popularity or sales. It's one retailer. It's some of the sales are impacted by the way they're bundled and how they're priced and so on. But it just gives us an idea of what the average consumer is buying and seeing what's selling well and what isn't. And I think it's a fascinating use case, or like a fascinating case to just kind of see where things are at in the market. I don't know if we're going to make this a regular thing. I think maybe we could do this once a quarter if there's any sort of the dramatic shifts in the market. I don't know if you guys are even interested in seeing more stuff like this. If you are, let me know in the comments though, and maybe we'll kick the tires on this idea another time. But for now, I gotta get going. Thank you so much for watching this video. Some quick plugs before we get out of here. You can find me on all the things: YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram at InThirdPerson. You can find me on Twitch at InThirdPerson, where I stream the Pokemon trading card game every Sunday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. And check out the website, inthirdperson.com, for more articles and videos on video games, board games, and other nerdy pursuits. So until the next one, I'll see you later. Bye-bye.